colossal works, the biggest things humanity has ever tried to build. There is an airport in Japan that has been sinking since the day it opened, not slowly cracking, sinking. Its artificial island has dropped more than 13 meters into the sea, and here's the strange part. The engineers who built it knew this would happen. They planned for it. This is the story of a building designed to lose a fight with the ocean, slowly, for the rest of its life. This is Kansai International Airport. It sits on a man-made island in Osaka Bay, a few kilometers off the coast of Japan. It was meant to solve an impossible problem, and to do that, engineers had to build something that had never really been tried at this scale, an airport floating on soft mud in the open sea. The problem was space. By the 1980s, the Osaka region was one of the busiest in Japan, and it was running out of room. Its existing airport was hemmed in by the city and could not expand or run at night without waking millions of people. There was no empty land left to build on, so Japan made a decision that sounds almost absurd. If there was no land, they would build the land. The plan was to construct an artificial island out in Osaka Bay, far enough from the city that planes could take off and land 24 hours a day. No curfew, no neighbors to disturb. To make that island, crews carved into mountains and moved around 430 million cubic meters of rock and earth. They drove more than 1 million vertical drains down through the soft seabed to try to squeeze the water out of the mud below. On top of that island, they built a terminal designed by the architect Renzo Piano. It stretches for about 1.7 kilometers, one of the longest airport terminals on Earth, a single sweeping roof, curved like a wing. When it opened in September of 1994, Kansai looked like the future, an entire international airport conjured out of the sea. But underneath the marble and the glass, the engineers were already fighting a battle they knew they could not fully win. Because the ground under Osaka Bay is not solid. It is a deep bed of soft clay laid down over thousands of years. Pile a man-made island on top of it, millions of tons of rock, and that clay does what clay does. It compresses, it squeezes down. The island was always going to sink. The engineers knew that. What they did not fully predict was how fast. In its first year, the island sank at a rate of about 50 centimeters, not over a decade, in a single year. It was going down faster than the models had promised, and in places it was sinking unevenly, which is far more dangerous for a giant building than sinking straight down. The airport had opened, planes were landing, and the whole thing was quietly dropping into the bay beneath the passengers' feet. The response to that came on 3 fronts. The first was money. The sinking was the single biggest driver of the airport's spiraling cost. By the time everything was accounted for, Kansai had become one of the most expensive airports ever built, with figures reported in the range of $15 to $20 billion. A huge share of that was the endless work of fighting the settlement. The second front was the engineering itself, and this is where it gets clever. The designers had known the building would sink, so they built it to be adjustable. The entire terminal stands on around 900 massive columns, and at the base of each column sits a stack of thick steel plates. When one part of the building sinks lower than the rest, crews jack up that column and slide another metal plate underneath. Then they lower it back down, level again. Think about what that means. This is not a one-time fix. It is a permanent job. For decades, teams have been going column to column, measuring, lifting, and shimming the airport back to level, one steel plate at a time. The building is not standing still. It is being constantly rebalanced on top of ground that will not stop moving. By 2008, the sink rate had slowed to around 7 centimeters a year, and it has kept slowing since. But it has never stopped. When engineers later added a second island for a new runway, that one began sinking too, and in places faster than expected, because the clay beneath it was even deeper. Today, the total settlement on that second island is measured at over 17 meters since construction began. 17 meters, and as recently as December of 2025, parts of it were still going down around 20 centimeters every year. Then came the third front, not slow physics, but a single violent night. On the 4th of September 2018, exactly 24 years after the airport opened, Typhoon Jebi slammed into western Japan's strongest storm to hit the country in 25 years, with winds over 200 kilometers an hour. The sea surged over Kansai's defenses and flooded a runway and the lower floors of the terminal. Some aircraft sat in water up to their engines. And then it got worse. A 2,500-ton tanker, torn loose by the wind, was driven straight into the only bridge connecting the island to the mainland. The bridge was damaged and partly closed. In an instant, around 3,000 people were trapped on an artificial island in the middle of a typhoon. It took days to get everyone off, and about 2 weeks to fully reopen the airport. Jebi was a brutal reminder. This airport does not just fight the clay below, it sits low, out in the open sea, as that sea gets more dangerous. So what is Kansai, in the end? It is easy to hear a sinking airport and picture a failure. It is not one. For over 30 years, this island has served as one of Japan's most important airports, running around the clock, connecting the whole Kansai region to the world. The very fact that still not promised the achievement it is the achievement. Because the years when it were sold to beat the binget, because rating has dead must adjusted, and then committed it forever. Its eye seal have been titty different, the nose since Scraby. The columns are still being shimmed. The measurements are still being taken, month from list of patient and the seat kept stable by constant, and that might be the most honest thing about it. Kansai does not pretend the ground is solid. It admits, in steel and concrete, that the sea will keep pulling it down, and it chooses to keep standing anyway. As sea levels rise and storms get stronger, more of the world's coastlines will face that same question. Not how do we stop the water, but how long are we willing to keep lifting and shimming and holding the line? Kansai has been answering that question for 30 years. The real question is how much longer the answer stays yes. If this blew your mind, hit that like button and subscribe for more megastructures. And wide likes every drive button and subscribe for more megastons. And tell me in the comments which one I should cover next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.